So, Richard, how long have you been an investment advisor?
It's been a little over 15 years now.
And in 15 years, there's been incredible upheaval in the financial market.
Yes, it's been one of the most volatile times, the most challenging time imaginable to be an investment advisor. Fortunately, my focus, my greatest expertise is on controlling risk.
Richard Morey of Secure Retirement believes most American investors have forgotten the economic lessons of the past 2 decades.
Twice in the last decade, stock investors have lost half of their money. You're setting yourself up to potentially repeat it.
And you think it can be mitigated?
Oh, yes.
Richard Morey believes we are in the midst of another major economic bubble. And to clarify, an economic bubble can be described as an asset that people believe so strongly in that it will hold its implausible or historically inconsistent high value. In this case, he's talking about stocks. So let's talk about bubbles. Give us recent examples of bubbles.
The housing market was an all-time bubble for housing, and we know how that ended.
Before that, there was a dot-com bubble. Would you consider that a bubble?
Oh, it was definitely a bubble. The dot-com bubble and technology stocks as a whole were in a bubble. And what happened? Well, the tech market went down almost 80%.
How far back do bubbles go?
One of the first ones I ever knew of was the tulip bulb bubble. Brilliant people, such as Sir Isaac Newton, lost his entire fortune investing in tulips. My prediction is that once again we're going to see the stock market with huge losses.
Now, you're talking about huge, you're talking about a collapse.
I'm talking about the types of losses we saw in stocks in 2001 to 2000 to 2002, 2008 to 2009, approximately 50% losses.
You know, this is not what I'm hearing, though, if I turn on the television set, because you hear the financial network saying unemployment is down, stocks are high, but they're not overvalued, economy's rebounding, the numbers are good. So why do you have this concern?
Numerous reasons. The broad economic picture is not what you're hearing because it is in a dismal state. Most recently, what I've been hearing on TV is that income is picking up and the American worker's okay. For 90% of U.S. workers, adjusted for inflation, their income hasn't gone up 40 years. That's sad.
That's staggering.
It's staggering. And again, it looks at the decline of the middle class, which is a serious problem.
And repeat it again, because that's pretty important.
Income has not gone up at all when adjusted for inflation in 40 years for 90% of the U.S. working public. Most recently, income has gone down 7% nationally since the year 2000, again adjusted for inflation. And without any adjustment, income nationally has gone down for 5 years in a row. Employment is really closer to a crisis. Over the last 5 years, in the United States, we have 16 million more people in population and 5 million fewer full-time jobs. We have the lowest percentage of working-age men with a job in the history of the United States of America. When you listen to the news, they only report the headline number, the first sentence. The second page can show a terrible job market, but they don't read the second page. The headline was, we created 250,000 new jobs in the month. And the stock market was excited. Look at all these new jobs. Well, if you'd read page 2, what you would have seen was that we lost a large number, well over 100,000 full-time jobs that month. All the new jobs that were created were part-time. Not only were they part-time, but they were basically poverty-level jobs. The reason unemployment has been going down in terms of the official number is not because the job market is good, but 2 reasons. One of them is every time somebody drops out of the job market and stops looking for a job or goes on permanent disability, they're no longer unemployed in the statistics.
So with no jobs or jobs with little pay to drive the economy, many major corporations reduced their earnings estimates for 2014.
In the fourth quarter of 2013, just recently, we had a period where we had about the largest number of companies downgrading their earnings expectations that we've ever seen.
Let me get this straight. When everybody is saying unemployment is down, the economy is strong, the market is doing just fine, and they lowered their expectations for 2014?
Over 80% of companies that gave further guidance lowered how much money they thought they were going to make.
To stimulate the economy, the Federal Reserve has issued, most would say just printed, a gargantuan amount of U.S. currency.
The last approximately $2.4 trillion the Fed has printed, every penny is sitting idle at the banks. Not one penny has gone out into the U.S. economy.
Why?
Because the banks have more money than they would ever need, and people aren't that interested in borrowing. Productive debt would be when a business borrows money to expand their business. We are at the lowest level of business lending growth. Business lending has grown about 4% in the last 5 years. The worst recession in the last 30 years, after lending grew by, I believe, 27%.
That exacerbates the job problem. The percentage of Americans working for new businesses, Maury says, has fallen 28% in the last 6 years. And historically, the main driver of growth in the U.S. has been the creation of new small businesses. Richard Maury's outlook is based, he says, on historical data, and it's also rooted in his Midwest convictions that being conservative in changing times is its own opportunity for profit.
I grew up on a farm in Iowa, and my family still has the farm. I learned investing from my grandfather on my mother's side and my mother. My grandfather sold his farm in the late 1970s. He invested all of his money in 30-year U.S. government bonds when they were paying nearly 19% in interest. So he made 19% a year on his retirement savings for 30 years. At the time he did it, everybody said he was crazy. My mother has been investing in agricultural real estate for 45 years, and she's made returns annualized of 22% a year. She would wait until prices had collapsed, and then she would double the amount of land they had.
The oldest trick in the book.
Yes, that's what...
Buy low, sell high.
That's the idea. But in the investment world, they not only don't do that, they actively rail against even trying. Our goal here at Secure Retirement is to make 5 to 8% in profits as stocks go down 40% or more. Then when they're low, then we'll start buying. I can tell you that every day that bubble doesn't pop and stocks don't go way down, we're a day closer to the end.